So, FYI. I want to introduce everyone to our beautiful panelists. We have Heather Royer, Anna Wilson, and Rachael Kranick.
Hi, everyone.
So the purpose of today is to really just do like basic breakdown of what white labeling, private labeling, and wholesaling are, and how you can incorporate them into your business, or how other brands and businesses use those techniques to build out their assortments. Um, so I'm gonna let the ladies talk. I'll just be facilitating. They are experienced in these areas, and I want to make sure that you're hearing from someone besides me. So, do you guys want to just do a brief introduction of yourself, what you focus on or what you do, and what area you'll be speaking to the most?
Sure.
Anna, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Hi, I'm Anna Wilson. I've spent about 15 plus years in product development and brand strategy. Started in fashion, then moved on to beauty, and now do CPG work. And I'm doing for companies like Kohl's and Claire's and Freddie Van Mel. Now I'm consulting through my own LLC with Freddie Van Mel and also a few interior design agencies, and helping to build brands and build product and do go-to-market strategy.
I'm Heather Royer. I'm a freelance design director focusing on helping overseas factories develop and design product for big box retailers like Target, Kohl's, and Walmart. I've been doing contract freelance for about 11 years, and I've been in the industry for over 20 years in fashion, accessories, dolls, toys, and then the past 5 or so years, more recently, soft home decor. And then I'm also going to be on an episode of HGTV the end of May. So that's another exciting thing that's coming out soon.
I'm Rachael Kranick. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, mostly in activewear, focused on the outdoor space. I've worked with brands with like Nike, Gibberish, lots of startups here and there. And I am going to be speaking about wholesale mostly today. I worked for a wholesale brand a couple years back, so I have some insights hopefully I can share with you guys that are interesting.
Awesome. All right. So let's start with white label. And that is going to be Heather, right?
I have a little bit to speak to it.
Did I get it wrong? No. Who's white label?
I think I was going to do that.
My bad. Thank you.
Yeah, you're good. Yep. So just a quick definition of white labeling. It's when you take an off-the-shelf product and just add your branding to it. So it's fast and low cost and a good way to expand into categories or test some demand. Example, some background cases that I've done. There's also different ways of doing white labeling. You do, I guess, quasi-hybrid white labeling, where you'd work with factories overseas and see what they already have existing and ready to go, and then tweak it to make it more customizable. So again, you're not taking on the risk of the product mold and the design, the development, the testing, but you're just adding on those extra elements so that it is different at shelf than everybody else, essentially. Another few examples of white labeling, when I worked at a company called Ripple Junction, which is a licensed wholesale apparel and accessories company, we would often use stock Gildan or Bella Canvas or any of those types of branded blank type apparel, and then we would test different graphics or different assortments, and then from there we would usually use that as a test case and design into certain things, knowing that those were the ones that did well or didn't do well. So that's a brief few examples of some of the things that I've done with white labeling so far.
Can you just briefly talk about what a blank is, and if you can I don't know if everyone knows what Gildan is. I do, but I don't know if everyone else does.
Yes, so there are essentially thousands and millions of blank t-shirts that exist all over the world. There's different companies like Gildan, Through the Loom, Bella Canvas. companies like that stock their own assortment of just blank t-shirts that you can essentially either have their label in the back ripped out and yours pad printed on the back, or you can do a sew-in label. So again, that's how you don't have to take on the risk of having the inventory supply, because you can draw down and pull from there. They oftentimes usually have, for smaller people who are just starting, there's certain websites that have a plethora of all the different brands that you can buy at a wholesale price. Or if you're a larger company, you would work directly with those companies like Gildan and Fruit of the Loom. So basically, one of my challenges that I had was I was in women's. Most of these stocked items, stock shelf items, which is white labeling, exists for men. So not that much for women or babies or things where fashion's a little bit faster. White t-shirt for a man is always going to be in style. So that is the challenge of, if you want to test a women's design, you often don't have that many options when it comes to fit, especially for plus sizes or anything other than just a standard t-shirt. So you would want to test on something to make sure that before you started your development, that it was doing well. So hopefully that helped to answer some of it.
I want to throw in a little comment here. I recently talked to someone who was building a side business of creating blanks with a factory that they could then sell, but she was doing it specifically for women. So she was creating blanks of activewear bottoms, bralettes, tanks, things like that they could then, so she was working with them to figure out how to best develop these blanks that they could then present to potential clients. So that's a really interesting way for you to look at maybe trying to get in with a factory and develop this in a way that you could make it work for your business. All right, private label.
Well, I have a little bit more on white label, if that's okay.
Totally.
So the way that I use white label was I built print-on-demand stores. So I partnered with someone that was repping for PBS Kids. So I was building stores like Eleanor Wonders Why, Wild Kratts, Dinosaur Train, and then some other TV licenses like Ozark. So we do a discovery call with the TV network, and then we get their style guides, and I would put together graphics and artwork, and then build them a print-on-demand store. You couldn't even really tell that it was print-on-demand, because I do all the assortments of how many men's, women's, kids, what the colors look like, what the graphics look like. And then once the sales started coming in, the networks would share the sales, and then we adjust the store. So that's another way of kind of using some of those blanks that we were talking about.
Before we move on, actually, I'm going to add one more thing, and then I'm going to open the floor for just one or two questions if anyone has them. That way they're timely to the topic. But if anyone's familiar with the websites that TeePublic or Canva even, or any of those places that you can do print on demand or customize, those are based on blanks. So they have an item that they have decided to stock, a tote, a t-shirt, whatever it is, a mug, and then that is a print on demand service. You pick what you want printed on it, whether it's something that you've designed or something that you found on their website that you like, and then they create the product on demand. They don't hold any stock. They don't have inventory. It's literally basic. It's a great way to kind of see what people are responding to without any initial investment. Are there any questions right now? Also, feel free to raise your hand, the little button there at the bottom, or just go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'll monitor that while we go through. Mari, go right ahead. Here you go.
Sorry, I waited. White labeling. I didn't know that was called white labeling, actually, so I'm learning something new. I've definitely thought about that for my own business, and that just kind of gets my juices flowing. What I'm just picking your brain right now, as a freelance designer or consulting studio, kind of like a lot of us, in the way that we work. We have the factory connections, we know the material, we would just have I see this challenge for myself, kind of have the funding to create these templates. Because I've had this idea of kind of pitching a little bit of a white label brand to local stores. I don't know, what have you guys thought about that? Like, have you known anyone that has done that more, like if you're a consulting studio?
Yeah, I started an initial project with a client. She's a yoga teacher, but also does like fine art. And so she was talking to me because I was like, your artwork would be great for pillows because I've been working on pillows. She's like, I want to do yoga clothes, but I knew she just wants to do like smaller runs that she can share. She does like those art shows with the little canvas tents that she shares her art. So I know she just wants to have like a small little collection. So I've been exploring looking at the print on demand that she could do some like yoga pants and maybe some crop tops without having to do all of like the pattern making and development, because I know she doesn't need a lot, and it's almost like an upsell to her fine art customers. So that's how I've been thinking of the white labeling in that particular respect.
Yeah, and to add on that, there are sites like Printful is great for like real-time mock-ups of what you want to do, and they have a pretty good assortment as well, and they have very low MOQs. Obviously, the more you order, the cheaper it's going to be. And then there are other websites too, like I think SNS Activewear, where you can see an assortment of all the different styles available, and it will also show you the inventory level across the whole United States, and you can figure out which location will get it to you faster and what size range and colors they have available. So a lot of places, like for yoga especially, I would say Bella Canvas is one of the top blank suppliers for those really soft like tank tops for yoga wear.
And like Anna said, the mock-ups are pretty good within those programs. So if you were considering offering that to your customers, you could even just go into that program and mock it up instead of doing like a real CAD. And there's also other mock-up programs that you can import into that if you want like a particular looking model or a particular scene. Even before you actually like try to sell the program or anything like that, you could just like mock it up and send it to your client and be like, hey, look at this. This could be something that you would like, and it goes pretty quick.
Yeah.
And there are a few websites as well. One particularly I've used in the past called Place It, which is great for just quickly being able to do like model shots with it and using your actual artwork on different models in different, with different looks, different settings, and things like that. So it's a really great way to bring something to life that you haven't made yet. So
yeah, cool. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jacqueline.
So I just want to like make sure that I'm understanding it. I get the whole like the factory has blanks that you can buy and put your designs on it. But as far as what was said earlier of like taking someone else's clothes, taking the label off and putting your own label on, can someone expand on that? Because I feel like it's a little confusing. Like they're doing it. I don't know. Can someone just expand on that?
yeah, so there depending on what printer you have doing, printing these things, there are different options. Some are the cheapest one would be that you would receive, we'll just go with Gildan, and they would rip out the tag on the back because it's usually perforated, so it's easy for them to rip out, and they would print your logo on the back. Your pad print is usually what it's called. So that usually, has your brand logo, the size, anything else you want to include as far as, wear and content type information. There are certain companies, like print companies, like Printful, I believe, will offer sew-in labels where you can work with them to do a variety of different, either complex or simple sew-in labels with either your, logo or maybe just your company name on it. But obviously that is more expensive. So those are the two different options. Or you can even just have them blank and not even have one if you don't want one.
Okay. I guess it sounds a little like, wait, you're taking someone else's, designs and ripping out their label and slapping your own on it, but you didn't do any of the work.
Well, it's not that, it's the finished good. So you're taking the blank t-shirt that Gildan made, and your portion of it is the artwork and the design. So it's your design. You're just using the base of the t-shirt that, because you didn't have it sourced and made, even though essentially you could, you're just choosing to use the resources of a different company.
And
So these are designs that are like super basic, like tote,
Yeah.
t-shirt, like whatnot.
And I also think it's like it's on the onus of the brand or the consultant to find a place that supplies blanks that fits within the brand needs. So making sure that the fabric content is right, the fit would still be appropriate. Like you're not going to just go buy like that Hanes or Fruit of the Loom tee that's like a box, fit and it's meant for a man and say that it's for a woman and slap your art on it, right? Like you're still going to go and find that exact silhouette that you're looking for. So it's a little bit more on you to do like the research ahead of time. Probably if you're doing this for a client, checking the samples, making sure that they're brand appropriate, maybe getting a couple like prints done to check the quality and all that kind of thing. But yes, essentially this is a strategy to save time by using someone else's fit and production.
Mhm. And the colors too. I find that sometimes I get restricted on the colors. Like I'll find a style that I like, but the colors will be in like man colors of like black, white, gray. Like they don't have like pretty female colors. So sometimes I have to pick other styles because I know what I want for like the assortment in the online store based on the brand too. So that's another consideration with the blinks.
Okay, that makes more sense. I guess I'm picturing like brands trying to, like, I don't know, take something more complex, like a yoga legging that's like, from Lululemon or something, and like ripping out that tag and putting their own on it. But we're just talking about like very simple.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are a little bit more complicated, but like in the yoga leggings example, like I think Printful has just a handful of the leggings, and so you can just pick from there which ones you like, and it's not proprietary like Lululemon or something. It's like their blank that they developed or that they bought from someone that knows. So I kind of think of it like a canvas. Like you might buy a stretched canvas and do your own artwork on it, but that stretched canvas isn't really like anything designed proprietary particularly.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
And I would also say like I would never say it was appropriate to take a brand like Lululemon's content and then put stuff on it and then call it yours. Like that is a branded.
I think that's what I was getting confused. I think that's kind of what I was thinking.
But also there are brands like Lululemon or like those big brands like will do corporate like collabs where somewhere like Barry's, like an established gym or something will take like a Lululemon legging, put the Barry's logo on it, and it'll be like kind of a collab situation. So it's like a corporate sort of conversation. So I don't know exactly how those work. I don't have experience in that, but I've seen it happen.
Yeah, and then also there's companies like Lululemon, they actually own their own blank companies. They own Bella Canvas. So anything that you're getting from Bella Canvas is being sourced from the same factories or about the same factories as Lululemon. So that's a great example of if you figure out the right blank supplier, usually there's others like Cactus and Pearl, I believe, that are higher quality than just a Gildan or a Hanes t-shirt. So it doesn't feel like you're just using like a dollar shop t-shirt. There are actually nice things that you can use.
Yeah, or like Champion does a lot of the college stuff too. So if I was working on a program that was more angled towards colleges, I might be more likely to try to use like Champion blanks than some of the more fashion forward blanks. Like there's certain blanks that fit, like what Anna was saying, that fit certain niches too.
Okay, yeah, this makes a lot more sense. Like colleges that like they're gonna order sweatshirts and hats and t-shirts for that match their college collegiate.
And it depends on the trend too. So for example, when thrifting has gotten big in the last few years, so for example, Urban Outfitters, instead of using the premium quality like Lane 7 blanks that they would typically use, which are higher price, they moved back to a Gildan 5000, which inherently feels kind of old, because they want that look. So then you would do like our company would do like a garment wash or some kind of dye on it, so that it feels like they're getting a vintage sweatshirt, but it's actually just a brand new Gildan 5000 with a wash on it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna have to move us along. Mari, I
Yeah.
saw that you raised your hand. If you would put your question in the chat box, and we'll try to come back to the questions at the end.
Sure. I just wanted to add a little comment, but I can definitely.
Oh
join
no,
the
do
chat.
that then. Do that.
Okay. Yeah, so just to Catherine, oh my gosh, sorry, Jacqueline's comment. I worked at a company that had just like full on racks of samples, development samples, because we had a bunch of different clients. So we almost served as a manufacturer for some of these like clients. And factories also have that log of samples that do not belong to brands. They just like take them to the trade show. I'm sure you guys have seen that, where like in the trade show, like a factory will have a bunch of samples. I'm in the knitwear world, so it does work. It is different. But that's just like a comment on like, wow, like there's a potential there for us as freelance designers to kind of use those blanks if it's for a certain client that doesn't want fully custom. In my world, in knitwear, which is different than cut and sew t-shirts. And factories actually want that because it's good for them. They have already developed the product, and it's just a lot, like it's cheaper for them to basically work that way if for the right client.
Thank you, Mari. That was helpful. All right, let's do the next topic. So that was private label. Yes.
Private label. So private labels, when you work with a factory or a vendor to make products just for your brand, often using their existing capabilities. So private labels, mostly what I've done my whole career. I was a senior designer at Target Corporation for 8 years, and then I moved to the vendor side, which evolved to other roles. So in most of my current and past projects, we build trend, color palette, design direction based on the brand needs, and then develop a line of products. Some starting from the existing library that the factories had or that we had, and then some would be completely new styles. And then often I would get like 4 samples made of each style, and then we curate for customer specific. So we have like a line already built, and then curate for the line for each customer, and then we keep the samples that they wanted to move forward with. So we just show the line, and they're like, I like this one, I like this one, and then these would be branded for each retailer for their in-store brands. And then in most cases, they were become exclusive to that brand. They go, okay, we're buying this. And then we take it out of the line and say, okay, sorry, no one else can have this. And then in my current setup, I don't always attend the meetings, but sometimes I prepare what's needed for the factories and for sales to present to the customers.
So the other, I shouldn't say caveat, but the other component to private label is also that, like, that's typically what most brands in like department stores that are like the owned brands function as. Like, those are their labels, those are their brands. They might do like what Heather said, and like they'll buy off a line from a manufacturer, but they also could develop their own product, from scratch.
Yeah, sometimes those factories would give us the manufacturers, they would prep the manufacturers by giving them design direction of like, this is generally what we like. Can you develop something like this specifically? Sometimes they would also give us artwork and be like, we love this like collegiate letter thing. Here's the letter we're using across all different categories. Can you make us a cool hat that has like a felt letter on it or something like that?
Heather, were you working directly with the factory then for that?
Yeah, I've worked a few different ways. So I've worked at the retailers as an employee, and then I moved to the vendor side as a vendor that works with different factories, and then I moved working directly for factories. So like my boss was the factory owner. So I've worked a few different ways.
I was kind of on the other side for a while. I worked for like Kroger, Fred Meyer. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's like a big retailer in the Northwest. And I worked in-house with them on their private label. And so that was like Courtney was saying, like that is their in-house brands, like exclusive to Kroger, Fred Meyer stores. And we designed those in-house, but we would work with vendors, and we always wanted our vendors to like design it for us, but they never did. It was crazy, or they did like a really bad job, so we always just designed it ourselves. But that is kind of similar, like in-house. The reason for doing that is like you get higher margins on that. You know, like our buyers were buying competitor brands as well, or like, you know, established brands that were a little more shiny, Nike, to kind of complement that assortment that we had in store. But then our in-house private label was like really where they got those margins and where they could do like kind of more explorative, like experimental type stuff, or kind of more of those core basics too.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've really been getting some traction on with my services is these manufacturers that sell directly to their retailers. Some of them are like know exactly what to do, but others, they get new categories or a new opportunity, especially with all the shifts from moving things out of China. There's factories now that are well established with certain retailers, but they might be given like a new category. So I help them build like their workshops for when they go and meet with like a Fred Meyer. I help them like get the right styles to show as a start, the right trend to show, the right swatches to show. So then they are a little bit more prepared to like give some ideas to the client, as well as the client being able to kind of pick and choose and having like good trims and good materials that we've like put together based on that particular customer.
I will say for private label, we ended up doing a lot of knockoffs, sadly. Maybe this was just the organization I was working for, but it was like, oh, this silhouette is really in demand, like this trendy item from, you know, Lululemon or whatever. And so it would be like, okay, how can we make like the private label version of that? You know, the lower price.
I did a lot of shopping. So I would go to Asia. I was going like once a month. It got to be too much, but I would stop in Japan and shop the stores and get like market samples. And I would do that as part of my trend. So I like for examples for headwear, I'd be like, okay, flat bills are important. Here's different flat bills that we saw in these really cool stores in Japan. And we'd change stuff. They'd be like, okay, I like that brim, this crown, this material. Can you do some new artwork for us? So we kind of like Frankenstein them together, but give them like a good idea of some of the markets that were ahead of our US market.
And like our buyers really respected you guys. Like whenever we'd go to a meeting, they'd be like, oh yeah, these people like that we're buying from, like they know what they're talking about. They know the trends. So they would like, you know, they would respected like the outside vendors more than they respected us, like the private label team. We were like their bitches.
A lot of the outside vendors have access to what the like H&M and Zara are already manufacturing. So if you ask it correctly, you can say, hey, what do you see coming in the next 6-9 months? And because H&M and Zara and other brands like that work so quickly, they usually can let you know what, you know, well, we've got a big order for chiffon or something like that, and that can give you an idea of what if you get a good relationship with a factory or vendor, then they'll usually work with you to kind of help nudge you in the right direction of what is trending with their other higher end clients.
Yeah, and you can provide so much value too, because I would go to some meetings with my sales team and they were great, but they were like, here, buy all of these things. And the client would look at me and go, I have 4 slots. What 4 slots do you think we should sell? And I'd be able to like pull them out and go, these 4. And the sales people would be like, but we need more. I'm like, they have 4 slots. Here's the 4. It would help because we could give them that kind of value added.
Yeah, and the reason to be versus just like, this is just cool. This is going to be cool. Like, there's actually trend like from WGSN or Fashion Snoops. This is what we saw. This is what we saw on the runway. This is what is coming down.
Yeah.
I love that you're able to do that as a freelancer too, and it's not just like all in-house stuff.
Yeah.
I think the missing component too that as freelancers we might not always see because we tend to work with smaller factories is that a lot of these big box suppliers that supply to like, you know, the big department stores, they will have their own design teams. So that's how they're able to do all this stuff. Like a lot of times like the smaller factories, like you're not going to get that kind of service. You know, they might have someone on staff that can help, but most often this is only going to be something that you'll see with those bigger factories. And so that's another actual way that as a freelancer you could try to offer services, is to approach them and say, you know, I'm in the US, I can help you as a designer to help you present to your clients. And that's something.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's something I was just talking about with you.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I've been able to angle with my freelance work, is getting work from factories, even if they have an in-house design team, because their team sometimes is focused on one area and then they're asked to do some other area that they're like, we're rug designers, we don't know Halloween seasonal, you know, and so I'm able to help them. In some cases, I'll do like trainings with them, or like for one of my clients, I put together like a holidays 101, like what does each holiday mean? What are some of the fonts? Like just like almost like a style guide for them, so that I'm empowering them to get to improve in a new area too. Or even just reviewing pads. Sometimes part of my packages is they send me pads and I help them fix it.
Is there any questions on this topic? Specifically private label, and we're going to move on to wholesale after that. And then we'll keep talking about these different things, but just for like baseline is where we're starting. Kate?
I was just curious from a freelance point of view, if say you've got someone who comes to you and says, I want to make a hoodie, but I want, I don't know, a custom embroidery, how would you handle that? Would you say, okay, fine, we can do that with these blanks, and you would do the tech pack for the placement and the size and all of that?
Yeah. In my case, I would do it from the blanks, and then if it was out of my skill set for part of it, I would sub it out. So for example, I had to do something similar to that, but they were looking for something that was kind of like real, like young men's and a little bit like country. And I was able to find a freelancer that had developed the Gravedigger monster truck artwork in the past. So I hired him to do that certain kind of look. So I was kind of like brought it all together, but I knew, I was like, I don't know how to do that, like monster truck stuff.
So you can offer it, you would still do the sketches and the tech pack and sort of manage that process. But as long as they, I mean, like a hoodie, as long as they don't want anything fancy with the fizz.
Right.
And then it's a cheaper option for them to get that made.
Yeah, and the low MOQs too.
And the low MOQs.
Yeah. So a lot of that kind of stuff, it's more about the artwork than anything else.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So that's a really good point though, Kate. Like this is a really great way to offer a client who doesn't have, you know, a huge budget. They have like a hero product that they really want to make their own, but they want to have a few component pieces to add, but they don't have the investment right now to fully develop brand new products. Then you fill in with some of these white labeling or private labeling kind of tricks to fill out the assortment.
And there's ways to even improve upon just a basic tee. Like you can add a silicone wash to improve the hand feel. You can, do a tie-dye, you can do cloud. There's ways to make it more customized, but you're still using that very core basic. And then by adding, all the different, if you did a bunch of different embroidery hits, that will make it look higher end. Obviously it will cost more, but I mean, honestly, Urban Outfitters, all those kind of stores, they do that.
And the other thing too is like when you're working with an experienced factory who has, let's say, like an assortment that they take to market to sell, kind of what Heather was saying, like when they will go to a brand or a store and they'll say like, this is what we made this season. Like, what do you like? What do you want to buy off our line? And then like, if somebody purchases that, like she said, they'll pull it off. They'll say like, nobody else can have this. Mm-hmm. But you could also take that one step further and say, I really like this style, but I want to make the adjustments. So you're working with somebody who understands the product, who can easily swap out those details, and it saves time versus starting from scratch. So again, if you're in a tight spot, if you're in a rush, like those are ways to kind of try to save time. All right, let's talk about wholesale.
Woohoo, that's me. Okay, my voice is back. Okay, so wholesale, for y'all that don't know, is so usually there's two ways of selling as a brand. You can either sell direct to consumer, which became really popular probably like 10 years ago. And now it's downtrending a little bit, and more brands are doing wholesale. So wholesale is B2B when they're selling business to business. So like a brand might launch their own product, like working with one of us as a freelancer, and then instead of selling directly or in conjunction to selling directly, they might try and sell to Nordstrom or little boutiques, like local boutiques, something like that. So that would be a wholesale relationship. And those B2B sales are sold at like that wholesale price point. So usually that's like half or less what the retail price point is that customers are buying when they're selling direct, so that way the brand can make sure they're getting their markup. So it's just another option, a way of selling for a brand rather than just directly to the consumer. It's just another outlet. I think it can be really helpful for these small brands to have those wholesale relationships. It's kind of like as a freelancer, when you get a retainer, it's like, oh, this is more reliable. This is a returning customer. So if your clients are able to secure those wholesale relationships, that's going to be really valuable for their just like growth and consistency. When I was working in-house for a wholesaler for about 3 years before I went freelance. And we did activewear, performance wear. And it was kind of like almost fast fashion. Like we were just like cranking out stuff, and it was kind of more is more mentality. And we would go to trade shows and like Magic and stuff. And like we had a lot of loyal customers, a few big box stores, but like also like a lot of small boutiques and stuff. And the benefit to those boutiques and shops is they could buy, like we would order, maybe 500 to 1,000 pieces of a design, right? And those boutiques could come in and they could order 1 pack, 2 packs, like, which would just be a size run, like small through extra large or whatever. And they could test that at their little boutique, their shop, just to like see how it performs, and then order like more as needed. So a lot of these little boutiques would just buy from us like one size scale at a time. And when it sold out, they would come back and buy it again. And we would just have that in our warehouse stored. So it was really easy for those shops to just go and like replenish their inventory as needed. And we were always like following the trends and what was new each season. So it always felt like really fresh for our customers. One of the challenges was definitely inventory. So we would order, like I said, 500 to 1,000 units of these new styles, fill up our racks for the season for our customers, but then like just be stuck with so much product at the end of the season that didn't sell. So it was constantly a challenge, like how do we offload this extra inventory? We were cutting deals, like selling it to like Ross and TJ Maxx and stuff, just trying to get rid of it, which inventory is always an issue in fashion. So I don't think that's necessarily unique to wholesale. But yeah, that was kind of the basic process. I think mostly in our, like as freelancers, how wholesale is helpful is just like something to be aware of when you're working with your clients, like just as another outlet for sales. I have talked to wholesale brands before to like be hired as a freelancer. They're kind of tricky. They will hire freelancers sometimes to design stuff, but they kind of want like quick and dirty and cheap and scrappy a lot of the time, especially here in LA. So you just have to find like the right wholesaler that has values and actually cares about like product and quality. But they will hire freelancers, and the thing about that is those are like brands that you're going to find on the trade show listing, right? Those are the wholesalers, like brands that no one's ever heard of. Most of their products are getting white labeled, are getting private labeled. So these little shops and stuff are buying stuff off their line, putting their own labels in it, like we were talking about earlier, to sell in their shop. Sometimes they're selling it as like whatever the wholesale brand is. Like I was working with Mono B, and so sometimes shops would just like have Mono B in their store, but sometimes they would put their own label on it. Sometimes they would put their own printed artwork on it. But so we kind of worked as like multiple ways. Like we could work as a blank facilitator, but also like they could buy the product as is.
I also think there's opportunities with wholesale because there's certain retailers that will come to a factory and go, you have your own brand. And so I've developed brands for some manufacturers so they can say like especially off price will come and say, do you have your own brand? And we'll come up with a few cool like brands. Like at one point I had 6 brands that I had worked with one factory. So we're like, we have this one that's more home decor. We have this one that's younger, and they'll buy it just like that. Or sometimes when we would build our line, like I was talking about in private label, people would say, I love this one. Can you do your own brand on it? And so then we just take it out of our collection. It would become an exclusive. And instead of doing their brand, we did this for Urban Outfitters, who had a brand that they had wanted. And we just put that in there. So it was the same kind of setup, but just branded.
Yeah, we kind of did that as a wholesaler too. Like if someone, like I said, if someone wanted to white label a product, like if they were willing to do, like they could either buy it off the rack and just like, you know, put their own label in, whatever, put their graphic print on it. But if they wanted like custom, they could come to us and like we would work with them to either do like a fully custom design, but like obviously the unit order was higher. They'd have to order at least like 500 pieces. Or like they could kind of do like more white label where it's like, oh, actually we like this, but let's refit it. We want it fit to like our size specs and we want it in our colors. And so we kind of customize in that way. And I don't think we ever really fully gave them exclusivity, but we would give them exclusivity to that fit and those color versions. But we never really sold them like full exclusivity to like that product when they bought it.
And I think that's like where you start to see different versions of these things like start to slide into the other realm. So like, yes, they're a wholesaler, but they're doing private label, right? Mm-hmm. So like it can get confusing if you're not like making that distinction in your head. And I forgot what I was gonna say. So Joanne raised her hand, so we'll go to her.
Yeah, so I'm getting a little bit lost about where everybody is in the pipeline. So this is like, you know, these conversations are a bit new to me. So I understand sort of the nuance of what each, you know, expert is talking about, but I have no context for where each person is in the pipeline and how that would, you know, practically help me understand where I might be in a freelance market versus what opportunities could exist. Does that make sense?
Totally. That is a really good in-depth question, and I'm going to come back to it because I feel like that's going to be an expansive conversation.
For sure.
Is there anyone else who has a question right now before we start talking about like some other details? No? Okay. I do, what did I want to say? I'm like so bummed out. Oh, Rachel mentioned magic. So like for those of you who have gone to magic or to a similar trade show where there is like, it's really a buying floor. It's not about sourcing. It's not about factories. It's a buying floor. Those are most often going to be either private label or wholesale. I'm sorry, white label or wholesale relationships where you're going to them. They've developed their own brand. They've developed their own product, and you're buying it to put in your store or on your online shop, whatever it is. And so, you know, they've created a quantity of product so that you can buy a lower MOQ to, you know, if you want to test out a trend, if you want to have a certain type of product in your store, but you don't want to commit to it fully yet. If you think about a lot of the boutiques that you might see in, you know, more like local areas versus like the big box stores, you know, they have to get their product from somewhere. They're not always creating their own lines. You know, they might try to then, you know, kind of do something small here or there, but they're not filling their entire store with just their own brand. And you'll often see them have like, you know, different brands and like capsules inside their boutique. So that's how like the product can get out to the store on a smaller scale in those smaller conversations. Not just talking about big box retailers.
And sometimes they'll batch the orders because we used to do a line for beach stores and none of those beach stores were big enough to buy our MOQs. So we would put together a collection and say, pick from these, and we'd send it to all the different beach stores. And then if there was enough picks from different stores, we'd batch the orders and then all of them could get the styles that they might not be able to have touched before because the MOQs would have been too high. But when they get combined, then they could, and oftentimes they were not competitors because one might be a beach store in Key West and one might be a beach store like all the way up in Georgia somewhere.
And another good point about batching is something I completely forgot about that you could do sometimes. It totally depends on the relationship with your manufacturer, but like batching your deliveries. So you can commit to 500 units, but only take them in 100 units at a time, something like that. Now, say you committed to 500 units, you got the first 100 and they didn't sell, you're going to probably have to pay some type of like fee or restitution to cancel the rest of the order. But at least then you're not sitting on inventory.
And another thing I've suggested for clients too is there's certain things that they can do, like run the base goods and then print on top. So it's almost like print on demand, but it's their own program. So like we were doing some printed rope rugs and all the base was the same. And then we would digitally print them. So we were offering, like, if you buy a certain, if you buy the MOQ for these printed rugs, you can do like 4 or 5 different prints, and then we'd suggest, like, I would suggest what prints based on like how it flows and that they're different, but then they could all be printed. So it's like kind of a combination.
I was also gonna say, like, as we're talking about, the print on demand, the white label, all that, I think like why it's been coming up in my conversations recently with clients is as basically a way to pad out their assortment when they're just starting. So like if you're a small startup, you like kind of the conversation has been like you launch with one like hero product. Like what is your specific fully custom product? That's what you're working with a freelancer for, really. Like you're going to build up from start to finish. It's super niche. You're solving a problem, yada, yada. You guys know what I'm talking about. And that's the one you're really investing in. But then maybe you want like a t-shirt that's branded and a hat and a hoodie to kind of like build out that assortment. So it's not just one piece in your store. And those things can have like your same brand identity, but it can be lower barrier to entry, easier for these startup brands to like get those products to kind of complement that hero piece. And have like some lower price point pieces in their store too. So their customers can get in easier.
All right, so I kind of want to go back to Joanne's question. Do you guys feel like you understood what she was asking? Kind of. Okay, so what I heard, Joanne, please correct me if I'm wrong, is she wants to understand how a freelancer could fit into this process. Like where would a freelancer live in the pipeline of the different options, and or like how each individual one of you has worked in the pipeline. So like talk about from factory to customer where you have been involved in the process. Joanne, did I get that right?
100%.
So with private label, I was involved in the process until the product was made, mostly. So I would help like build the line, do the market intel. I'd work with the factory on some of the materials and up until the sampling. And then once it's sampled, like I didn't do any of like the flows or the orders or any of that part. And then in the white labeling with the print on demand, I would create the shops and then they would take over from there with like the sales and the ordering and that type of thing. Some of it was built into the process because it was print on demand.
So as a freelancer though, like how did you get involved in the conversation? So like who came to you and said, I need your help with this?
How did I get the lead?
Yeah. So before you got into the spot where you're like developing the product, like how did you get inserted into this process?
I usually had worked with them before, or they found me, like more recently, people have found me on LinkedIn with my niche of, hey, do you have this problem? This is how I've solved it in the past. And then I've gotten some leads from that, but other times, like some of the big box retailers will really want to develop a certain factory, but they might not have the skills. So they'll be like, hey, factory, you might want to call Heather. She can probably help you out. Here you go. You guys now you guys work it out.
And I would say that's very specific for Heather because she has a lot of experience with Target. So she is a Target subject matter expert. Like she is the go-to girl for like understanding how to get product from a factory into Target in her specific realms of expertise. I would say for a general person who does not have those connections, doesn't have that background, I would see it as you would be offering a potential client that you can help facilitate that relationship. But you would need to develop the relationship with the factory beforehand, to be able to offer that to your client. So you would have to know that their capabilities align with what you need, that they're able to, turn around on what you're going to say that they can turn around on, and all those, ins and outs. I know that Anna has a very different experience. I want to let you talk to how you fit into that whole process.
Recently I've worked directly with them, so not in a freelance capacity. But I would say that one way to do that would be to, if you have your own portfolio, go on LinkedIn or go to some of these trade events like Magic and just start talking to people and figure out some contacts and see if they need help with their design assortment, knowing that you're in the United States and that they might not be, and it's not easy for them to go, and go out to the store and just get photos. Like there are ways to kind of ease into those type of relationships, but it is challenging if you're not directly working for a larger company that either has a wholesale relationship or is a private label. Unfortunately, it is challenging to get into those relationships.
Or you could do mock-ups too, like if print on demand and building stores was something that you were interested in. When we were pitching to to PBS and some of the others, I would do mock-up stores and say, here's what we could build you. It's not your artwork, but this is an example. And sometimes it was only like 5 little pieces and a banner so they could kind of see. And then they'd be like, I want that, but for us.
Yeah, you can do you can get your own mock-ups as well. Like you can create your design, your graphic, and get it mocked up onto, Place It, and then get an actual design printed or made up from a print on demand. And then you have samples to go take and say, this is what it could look like, or here's an example of my work. And that's a good way to actually have product and represented and in, some higher end campaign type looking photos.
I've literally done this for myself. I found a business that I was really interested in their process and like how they did production on demand. It wasn't quite a blank situation, but it was low MOQ. You could design through their website for the bodies that they had available. So like that part was kind of like a blank, but everything else was customizable. You could customize the fabric, you could customize the print, the trims, the threads, everything you could still decide. And then they would make it in the order quantities and the size pack that you wanted on demand. And so I went and I put together a few items in different categories because I wanted to see what they were really capable of. And I paid to get the samples made so that I could see if it was something I wanted to offer to clients. So there is a little bit of investment on the freelancer side when you're trying to build out, these relationships and understand what factories you actually want to offer to clients. But it is a really valuable, I think, resource to have under your belt to provide these options to somebody who's building a brand and may not have, a ton of investment for a startup. And I think the other thing too that we sometimes don't think about when we're working really insulated with small brands or even, anything that's not a big box retailer is you don't really always think about the sales side. Like most of us are really focused on the design portion. Like we want to get our client what they want, we get the product made, and then we kind of, we don't see the other side. So there's that whole other bit of where are they selling it? Is it just online? Are they selling it to stores? Are they going to these trade shows? So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. There are third-party vendors, like kind of what Anna was speaking to, and I know some of the relationships businesses she's worked in, where their whole business strategy is not to have their own store. Their whole business strategy is to sell to other stores. So they will have a sales team that takes the product that has been developed and they'll go shop it around and try to sell it.
Yeah, I think that's like 100% wholesale, right? Like you don't have a direct consumer, you're just wholesale.
Joanne, did that help?
Yes and no. Now I have 12,000 more other questions. Let me give you a little bit of frame. I'm a technical designer and a pattern maker. And if I wanted to learn something new, so where I end up finding myself, whether I like it or not, is I get plugged into agencies where they need help with fit because that's really where my niche is. So I end up giving everything I need to the product developers. So I don't ever see any of the factory information because those design agencies, their product developers don't want you to connect with the factories and the sort of full end to end. So this is why I feel lost, because I'm sort of stuck in the middle, and I'm really interested in what y'all are doing and what that could mean if I sort of strategized and thought about how I might expand more. But because I sort of get in this circular sort of place, I have no idea still where I would start or finish based on, like I said, it's my own frame of reference. So it's not that anybody didn't explain something correctly. It's more like where I've sort of naturally found myself as a designer, like as a technical designer.
No, I think that's fair, and I appreciate you sharing the background of like how you're trying to understand. So I think for you, it definitely is harder, and I'll let you guys speak too to see if you have a different point of view. But I would say if you were trying to get into one of these business types or to pitch to these types of clients, let's say like the wholesale, like you would go to them and say, I'm a technical designer. If you're developing product and you want to and create a specific fit, like, I'm your girl, I have experience, let's just say, and like we've talked a lot about yoga leggings. Like I'm an expert at yoga leggings. Like I can help you develop a really great universal fit that is going to sell well. Or same thing for kind of like the private labeling or white labeling, where you can help them on the front end when they're developing these assortments to create those blanks or initial ideas. So it really is still getting in on like the ground level with the factories. So I would say you would need to bypass the agency and go directly to start trying to develop relationships with the factories.
I think that's what I was looking for. Like who is they in all of these conversations? And I know that the they is going to be different whether it's white labeling, private labeling, or wholesaling. So that's what I was trying to ascertain.
Factories or wholesalers as well, because like when I was working for that wholesaler brand, like we did our own fittings in-house for all of our product, like right, because we were developing, like Courtney was saying, like we were developing that product for other brands to white label. So we did all those fittings in-house, and we were so busy with the design and everything else, fit was like such an afterthought, and it like killed me how little like time and energy they put into it. And I kept telling them, like, we need an expert, we need to bring in a fit expert, like this is not my area, we need someone who specializes in the space. And they were like, that's expensive, blah blah blah. But I think like if a professional were to come in and pitch themselves and like really sell it, they'd probably at least be open to trying it for a while, just to like see if there was an improvement and like how far it could take them.
Also, Joanne, I've had some luck recently. I didn't know what factories I wanted. Like I knew I wanted to target factories, but I didn't specifically like make a list. I just posted, like I created a PDF of like what I could do for the factories, like an example of my process and what problem I solved. And then they found me in some cases. So if you get really clear on what you think the factories need and how you can help with your specific like expertise, not like, oh, I wish I had this or I wish I had that, because I went through that at first for myself. I was like, no, what do I know already that will help these factories? And then I started posting it, and then they started reaching out to me and being like, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. I'm working on this project. What does that look like? And then I build a proposal or like just a little recap. So you could set it up so they find you.
We are over time right now. Are you three okay to continue for like 15 more minutes, or does anybody have to jump off? Good? Okay, great. So anyone, if you need to leave, this is being recorded. I'll post it on YouTube within 15 days, but if you're happy to stay, keep hanging out. We'll do more Q&A. So I will just want to add one more point to that as far as like the tech design aspect. a lot of wholesale goods are not well fit. They're made to be kind of one size fits all. So this is a really great opportunity for a tech designer, like they've said, to reach out and say, I can make your wholesale product better.
Mm-hmm. And I would add upon that and say wash tests. A lot of people don't do those. So if you can, like, I mean, strategy would be grab someone's product, do a couple wash tests. If you see a big difference, be like, you got an issue here. I don't know. Like, if you just would have washed it 5 times and someone could have told you that the print's coming off or it shrank or it ripped or something like that. But a lot of places do not do wash tests.
Yeah, or get some photos of like the basic samples of like how bad it fits, and then maybe something that you've worked on that fits really nice, and say, this is what's off the shelf and this is what I could do. Don't you need this?
That's beautiful.
Because that can save wholesalers reorder, or like, they could be forced to buy it back. That's happened before where you get a whole, I've made a whole range of thousands of goods, and then the vendor, even at their offices, they didn't have someone like a QC person, and like one of the legs was like 6 inches shorter than the other one. And it's like, well, we're not paying for these. So, so it's like things like that where, people they're just go. They don't really check to make sure that the quality is there on some of these, some of the stores.
So that's why
it feels like oftentimes they don't care.
No.
They don't because it's not their brand on the product, right? Most of the time it's getting rebranded, so there's no skin off their back. So that is the other thing that I wanted to reiterate is like, if you're going to offer these opportunities to your clients, remember that you're still like, you need to take a little ownership of vetting those situations and making sure there is QC in the process somewhere, or that you're doing QC somehow. Like, not you personally, but like you're adding it into the process. And I also I was looking at Jenny, thinking of different freelancer types and different ways to like incorporate, but like Jenny focuses a lot on 3D. So like that would be a really great thing to offer to these clients, to say, I can help you build out your, assortments to show to your potential buyers in a 3D way so that you can, have better visuals. That would be a way that like another person,
I've
another
been
type
thinking about that too.
So that's
like
another
building
opportunity, I would
things
say.
out, yeah, in a modular way. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Or even collaborating, like Joanne, I don't know if you know 3D or not, but maybe you could collaborate with Jenny, and Jenny could do the 3D and pitch it. That's the 3D part, but then you show the fit part, and you're like, hey guys, we have a whole team. You don't have to go out and find all these experts. We already have them. We already work together. We already, we vetted each other. That's a huge value.
That's the way I use 3D, is mostly to sort of streamline fit as much as possible without a physical sample, because it does reduce a lot of waste.
Nice.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up based on what Anna was just talking about like having the vendor like take the stock back. So this is like kind of an industry term, if you've heard of like RTV, it's return to vendor. And that is another opportunity for you to offer potential cost savings to your client, to say, you're lessening your risk here if you try this new factory and they don't produce the product to the specs. Like, they will have to take it back. It will be on them. It won't be on you. If you're in a specific situation, let me clarify. Like, that's not going to be every time. But like, if they have promised you a pant with legs that are the same length and they don't deliver, that's on them. What other questions do we have? Throw them in the chat, raise your hand, speak up. Do you guys have any anecdotes or anything else that you want to share before we, actually, we did get some questions ahead of time. Let's do some of these. Does anybody have any advice on how you could vet one of these sources?
I use my network. So I reach out to people and I say, do you know these guys? Have you worked with these guys? And if I don't know someone in my network, I'll go through LinkedIn and see if I have any second or third connections, and I'll reach out to them. And oftentimes, if you come from a place of, hey, I'm starting to work with a new client, I'm excited, do you have anything to share? If they, oftentimes they'll be comfortable sharing if it's something good. And if they're like, know, then that might be a red flag because maybe there's something negative. But often I find more positive stuff. Like there was a client I was interested in working with, and I reached out to one of my networks, and they had like a glowing thing of like all the sustainability they've done. They even had a school. They had like all this stuff, and it made me want to work with them even more. But that's the best way to find out when you can.
I've also, like, when I start talking to a new manufacturer, this is more for direct sourcing, but like, I'll ask them who else they've supplied their goods to, and they'll normally give me a few list of like brand names, and then I'll Google search them, and then I'll just go to their contact page and be like, "Hi, I'm a freelance designer and consultant, and I'm got your name from so and so, and I was wondering if you'd tell me about your experience with them." And like, I literally just did this yesterday, and somebody already got back to me, and I have a meeting on Monday to hear what their experience was.
And a lot of times you can tell based off of what type of people they supply to. Like, I know this is obviously a huge company, but Walmart has certain certifications that vendors have to adhere to, you know, like child labor laws and things like that. Obviously, you're probably not working with those same type of factories, but if you look who they're supplying to and you look what those companies' values are, then that's a good indication of if they are quality vendors.
Mm-hmm. And Disney's another one. Like Disney is considered like the highest, hardest factory like audits and things like that. So if they say they've worked for Disney, you know, like, you know, it's good.
In the chat we had, where can you find a list of factories that do wholesale and private labels? I don't know that there's like a general list just out there in the ether, but another or a good option is to look at trade shows and see who's presenting at the trade shows, like who are their exhibitors, and then you can either find them through that website or just, you know, Google search yourself and try to find a way to, you know, reach out, cold pitch, contact, whatever. Or to Heather's point, see if you have any connections in common. You know,
sometimes you can find some information on the tags with the RN numbers for apparel too. You can search that, and then depending on the retailer, it sometimes says who the vendor is on the tag too.
Yeah, and the RX site, just make sure you're not looking at a registered nurse site, because I've absolutely
any tips on how to strengthen like a portfolio to get more white label gigs?
I would say the more added elements that you can show it from beginning of your thought like taking the customer through or client through your thought process of like not just being like, here's a pretty thing, but like, this is how it would spark the idea, and this is, you know, point A, and this is how it came along, and then this is how I, you know, made it into this big, you know, beautiful thing with all these different product images that you can kind of mock up in AI or do a place it type thing. That way they can see your entire scope of worth, basically.
Okay. Any recommendations on how to find a company that offers white labeling with low MOQs?
I would start in print on demand, but that would be my first go-to. Like, I had worked for a company that was similar to Printful, but I was looking for some other options. So I just Googled like who has, like, what company has good print on demand styles, and it gave me like the 10 best print on demand, and then I just went in and looked at stuff. That's more specific just to print.
And then Rachel could probably speak to it more, but specifically like in LA, there's a lot of people that will just do like small little runs just right there in LA. So if you can get in with a couple of people there, you might be able to get some customized low MOQ things.
Anna, in your experience when you were selling kind of white label type situations, like what were normal order sizes?
Our lowest was 600, and that was on a special, had to be the right client to do that. But usually our typical orders were like 2,500 up to 10,000 units. But again, those are pretty, you know, big stores.
Right. Because you worked with like more of the big box retailers, right?
Well, so Urban Outfitters, Hot Topic were some of our main customers. And then we also did discount stores, which would get up like in Ross or TJ Maxx, we get up into 10,000 type range, just to be able to afford the cost. But yeah, so that's usually the scale.
So Anna, can I get some clarification? So you're saying you working for a company that has big box retailers as customers, or you're working for the big box retailer in-house?
No, they were our customers. So I designed a line of product and said, hey, here's all of these different blanks. Essentially, we can do what you want to them, essentially, and then.
Can you give me an example of a company who does this? I'm very visually oriented, so I'm trying to understand. Like, I didn't realize that there were companies out there that this is their framework. So this is new to me. So I'm just curious.
Well, so what I was specifically in was licensed apparel, which is a totally different beast than.
Yeah, I currently work at Fanatics in product development, but I'm so siloed that I don't get the rest of the process.
Where I came from sold to Fanatics, so that's funny. I mean, the specific places I'm thinking of are like Hybrid and BioWorld. Those are the main licensed apparel companies, apparel and accessory companies. It's a very niche market, so those are pretty much it.
I would also say, sorry.
I just started working with BioWorld, Anna. I'll have to pick your brain on that if you have experience.
I used to work at BioWorld. I was
it's a very small industry.
So funny.
I have not worked for BioWorld, but I have partnered with BioWorld. So yeah, BioWorld's a big one. Sorry, I don't know why. I think I'm gonna be honest and say it's menopause brain. Every time I start trying to talk, it just disappears. I'm gonna shut up for a minute. Joanne, did you have like a more question?
Oh, I have 9 million questions that there's just not time for. I'm deeply fascinated because it's making me aware of how rooted in. I didn't even try to find where I've landed in the process that keeps coming to me, like where my natural like pipeline for my own customers is. I didn't even realize how like narrow that little window is until I'm listening to you ladies talk. And now I'm like, what am I doing?
So I remembered what I wanted to say. So you know how like in the grocery store will have ketchup and then there's like Heinz, and people will say, well, like the grocery store brand is just Heinz with a different label on it, right? Like it's like that for clothing. So like there will be companies.
That part, the end product makes sense to me. It's the pipeline of who works where, when, why, and how that I'm my mind is just completely blown. Like I get the sort of the concept from the consumer end. It's from the, our end, the insider's end that I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like, it feels like there's like 20,000 mind maps and ways to like one resource.
I mean, there really is. And that's kind of the purpose of this conversation, was to kind of help explore different ways to get product to a brand or client or a store in different avenues besides like literal design to development.
And if it seems muddy, it's because it is. Everybody is just literally scrambling to get things done. There is no clear path. Like you think you're going this way, but really you're going that way. Like
I kind of love that, to be honest. I've recently had some conversations, just like in interview with other, companies. And I always find it interesting. They're like, okay, tell me what your product development process is. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to tell you that without knowing exactly what your own pipelines are already? Like, unless you're talking to a startup who doesn't have any foundation, I feel like it can never give good answers unless they've spent some time giving clarity to their own existing process. Because I found myself fumbling in an interview the other day with a company I really want to work for in my local area, which is rare because I'm not in an industry city. And I was just like, what do you mean? How do we do this? Like, you access your network, you make some phone calls, you send some emails, you're really polite. If you don't have a contact, somebody that you know has a contact, and you get it done. Like, what do you mean? Without knowing everything you already do, I don't know how to answer your question.
Does anybody have feedback on that?
I would just think about how you personally work through your process. Like, they're probably not as, like, they know their process. They probably just want to see how you work and if it's something that might dovetail in or make sense to them or they might be picking your brain to see if maybe you have another way to do it that they might not have thought of.
Yeah, or just
Wow.
maybe past examples. If you give a couple of different past examples, then those are concrete examples of how you've done it in different ways. So then they can at least see that you've done it in multiple different scenarios.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. That makes sense.
Alrighty, I am going to call it. Thank you guys so much for staying for the extra 20 minutes. I really appreciate you, not only for being here, but just for staying as well. All these ladies are on LinkedIn. You can find them, and I'll also send out a follow-up email with the information on this call, their contact, and information about our next Lunch and Learn, which is going to be in May, and it's going to focus on all things knit. And I'll have another panel of 3 beautiful ladies to share their expertise. So thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
for putting us
you.
together, Courtney.
Bye, guys.
Bye.